Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everyone. Conversation with Shaykh Hamza Yusuf, the founder, the president of one of the most illustrious institutions, colleges, universities, one of the first founded Islamic university and college in North America. Shaykh Hamza is no stranger to the American population online, on site. Neither is he a stranger to the world population. The work that he has done in the United States, equally has done even more outside the United States. Shaykh Hamza Yusuf, may Allah protect him, is a mentor, a teacher, a leader in person to us through his writings, through his literature, through his translations, through his philosophy, through his education, and just his demeanor, the way he presents Islam, and the way people have benefited from him. For the past 3-4 decades, we Muslims in the United States of America are extremely indebted to Shaykh Hamza Yusuf. I say this all the time, may Allah give him life and barakah. A lot of times when people give their opinions on teachers and mashayikh, and I say, even the great scholars like Bukhari and Abu Hanifa, when they were alive, they were not appreciated enough. And it's important for us to appreciate the scholars, their heritage, their tradition, their leadership. And from that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the tawfiq to learn from them. And Shaykh Hamza is one of those great scholars. And it is an honor to sit on the same screen with him. I'm even not in person. When we're in person, it's a different feeling. And I'm quite jealous of the students who've learned from him and the teachers who teach with him in the same college. I want to invite Shaykh Abdul Wahab on the screen first, so he can also join me in welcoming Shaykh Hamza. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh Abdul Wahab.
Bajan,
How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, good to see you.
I'm a little nervous, and the only way I can get rid of this little there's nerves that are in my skin right now is just to bring on Shaykh Hamza Yusuf, because he's gonna help me deal with him, inshallah.
Bismillah, it's an honor for us to bring Shaykh Hamza on. Assalamu alaikum
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ramadan Mubarak. For the Urdu speakers, chant Mubarak.
Yeah. Sheikh, wait, since you did that, how many other languages can you do it in?
Ramadan.
You can probably knock out a few more, Sheikh.
Feliz Ramadan.
What is that?
Ramadan Kareem to you, Shaykh Hamza. And
well, they say like Feliz Navidad, Merry Christmas. So Feliz Ramadan. Merry Ramadan.
May Allah bless you, Shaykh Hamza, and inshallah you're enjoying your time with your family, and we're honored. Like I don't have words to express the honor, the privilege for us to have this conversation with you. And it's not that I'm not celebritizing this opportunity, but it's really an opportunity of sitting with a scholar. Last time you came on our Friday Night Live, that same weekend, we had you and Khabib Nurmagomedov came in person to Michigan. So I walked in the house. So my sister-in-laws looked at me and said, "This week you have Khabib Nurmagomedov in person, and you have Shaykh Hamza Yusuf online. What are you more excited about?" And I said, "Is that a question? What are you asking?" I was like, "Of course not Shaykh Hamza Yusuf." I started looking at Khabib just 2 months ago, and Shaykh Hamza, I've been looking forward to sitting with him, talking to him since I was 10 years old. So Shaykh Hamza, we truly, and from the bottom of our heart, honor you and respect you. So we want to thank you for joining us.
Alhamdulillah, no, I appreciate that. And scholar is I'll accept it as an English term, but like both of you, we're طلاب العلم, which is seekers of knowledge. The title alim is given out way too glibly in our modern Islamic tradition, because in the past, to reach that level of a true scholar in Islam is quite rare. I've only known a few in my own life. I've met many learned people, but I've only known truly a few people that I would consider like real ulama, and most of them were Mauritanians, some from the Middle East, but and even they would not. I remember one of the sheikhs that I studied was Sheikh Bayya bin Salik, who, interesting enough, was the sheikh of Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya. So we're actually we share a teacher, because he was his sheikh in Quran and he was my sheikh in fiqh. But he was probably one of the most learned people I've ever met, and I remember sitting with him, you know, and his library was much bigger than the one you see in the back here. And if you opened up any book, it had his notes, and
Wow.
you know, it was amazing. And I remember telling him, I said, you know, it's amazing how much knowledge you've acquired. He said, you know, my sheikh, meaning Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya's father, Shaykhna Mahfoud, had maybe three or four shelves of books, a much smaller library, but he was much more learned than I am.
Wow.
And sometimes you think it's humility, but I really genuinely think he was stating a truth. And there were two sheikhs, Sheikh Mahfoud, Shaykhna Mahfoud bin Bayya, and there was a sheikh there. His name was Muhammad Shain Ul Salam, and he was. Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya told me he did not think that Sibawi was more learned in grammar than he was.
Wow.
Wow.
And so the two of them took the Qamus of Feroz Abadi, and they did a tahqiq of it themselves. And they corrected all the mistakes in the edition that they had. And just two of them in the desert with very limited resources. And when the Kuwaitis actually did a tahqiq of it, like a critical edition, they sent it to Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya, and he checked it with his father's critical edition done with this Sheikh Muhammad Salam Ul Shain. Yeah, Muhammad Salam Ul Shain. And he said they found all of the mistakes that this group of PhDs in Arabic, like 15 of them, that all they did was Arabic, and they found and more. They found certain ones that they didn't catch. So, you know, that we're losing the scholars, and that's why young people like you have to really work hard and just expend as much energy as you can to acquire the tradition, because it's naqal. You know, the Chat GPT is not going to replace scholars.
Yeah.
Because it can replace, you know, just the kind of, you know, there's an element to it that's going to be very dangerous, because it will eliminate some types of scholarship. It'll be much faster at collating a lot of data. But in terms of the human element that's absolutely necessary in our tradition, because one of the things about, you know, the thing about humans is most humans have some level of mercy. AI has no mercy at all.
Yeah. They have no emotions.
Yeah. So technology has no mercy. And it's very interesting because Charles Lindbergh, the great man who flew across, he's the first transatlantic flight across from the United States to Paris in this small little plane, the Spirit of St. Louis, and incredible courage to do that, because he would have had to stay awake for, I don't know, 40 hours or something. But he said, God will always forgive you. People will sometimes forgive you. Technology will never forgive you. So if you make a mistake, you make Tawbah, God forgives you. You make a mistake with people, the good ones will forgive you, the bad ones, they'll just hold that grudge. But technology, if you make a mistake with technology, if you're driving down the road and you start looking somewhere and you lose your attention, you know, the accident happens, technology is not going to have any mercy on you. And so, you know, it's like when you're driving and a police pulls you over. I don't know if that's ever happened. I'm sure it has never happened.
Police, don't open that discussion getting pulled over.
But anyway, if you ever get pulled over by a police officer, if you're actually respectful for them, officer, you know, whatever I was doing, it was unintentional. And he'll say, you know what, have a nice day. He might do that. But that AI guy that clicks your thing on, you just get the ticket in the mail.
Yeah.
There's no mercy.
Yeah.
So technology has no mercy. And Islam is a religion of rahmah. And that's why the scholar has to have mercy when they look at others, when they judge, when they have not in the court of law so much. I mean, the court of law is for adala. And the mercy is, the onus of the mercy is on, in a civil suit, it's on the side that's suing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they should try to forgive and be more merciful. But in terms of criminal law, then the judge is there to be just.
Sheikh, before we extend this conversation, I just wanted to say, when you talk about the aspect of knowledge, if I had a library that good looking behind me, I would call myself Allama. Like, just like I would consider myself one of the greatest scholars just by the backdrop.
It's a green screen. I'm just
No, mashallah. And Sheikh is being very humble. There's shelves, if at least one, where there are books of just Shaykh Hamza Yusuf. I know, because I have a good volume of some of the writings that you
I
have.
haven't written that much. I've written a lot that's in my computer that I haven't published. But
Are you one of those people that you're going to have many more books published after you leave this world, or you're going to share them before?
They call that, yeah, inshallah. Because then nobody can, I won't have to listen to all the attacks.
No, you don't have to worry about that, Sheikh. Sheikh, before we went on live, you gave us a teaser, and we were talking about how some of the work that Zaytuna published and that Zaytuna is publishing, it's Ihsan, has excellent quality, and there's some of the, and I think, I haven't been to Zaytuna campus on site, but I've seen the videos, and I've hosted Sheikh Imam Zaid Shakir for multiple fundraisers here in Michigan, and may Allah protect him. So the work that we see on site, Sheikh Abdul Wahab and Sheikh Abdul Rahman, my brothers, came, and you were very gracious to give them a private tour. But what I heard, beyond just the education, the itqan and the ihsan and the details of the campus and the work that you're doing, what inspired you to do it with that type of mindset? Is it just you being white American and you just want to be perfect, or is it that you're not a child of an immigrant? What is it?
Because
first of all, what inspired me was going to the Muslim world and seeing the remnants of what the past had left behind. One of the Andalusian poets said, "Tilka atharuna tadullu alayna fanzuru ba'dana ila al-athari." These are the remnants that we leave behind to let you know who we were.
Wow.
So look at our remnants.
Wow.
And so when you look at what the Muslims left behind, you realize they were people of itqan and ihsan, and only because the Prophet ﷺ told them, "Inna Allah yuhibb al-abd idha amila amalan an yutqinahu." Allah loves a servant that should he do anything, he does it with itqan, with real precision and excellence. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Inna Allah katab al-ihsana ala kulli shay." I mean, look at this hadith, is so amazing, because every single thing has an ihsan in it, everything. And then he used one of the most difficult things, which is dhibh, as his example. So he went down to something that outwardly is actually a very harsh thing. And he said, even in the dhibh, there's ihsan. Let him, sharpen his knife, and let him give repose, let him give ease to the animal. So ihsan is part of our religion. And I think the Muslims, for whatever reasons, many Muslims forgot this aspect of the religion. And so it's really important. One of my mentors, and who had a big impact on me, is Sayyidina Ibn Attas. And Sayyidina Ibn Attas talks about adab, like that the fundamental crisis in the Muslim world is the loss of adab. Adab is putting things in their proper place. It's putting things in their proper. So you put people in their proper place. I was commanded to treat people in accordance with their stations. And that's not meaning that you denigrate people in lower stations, but you don't treat the street sweeper with the same deference that you would treat a scholar or a politician, or everybody has their maqam. Even the angel said, "Ma minna illa lahu maqamun ma'lum." So so there are maqamats, and so it's just respecting that. Everybody should have human dignity, but the Imam Ali famously said, and this is a sound tradition, "Qimat al-mar'i fima yuhsinuhu." The value of a human being is their ihsan in whatever they do. And so if you value yourself, then you will do things with ihsan. And if you lose a sense of that, then you've lost a sense of your own self-worth. And that's why I'd rather do a little with ihsan than a lot with mediocrity. I mean, had I been satisfied with mediocrity, I would have many, many books, and I would have many things done. But I won't do it. And the people that work with me know that. So it takes us a long time to get something done because it goes through several iterations. I mean, even now with the dua book that we did a second iteration. We went through it really closely and we improved it just to get it better. Because I talk with my people, I talk about yawning gaps and then calibrations. You know, in the beginning, you have these yawning gaps that you want to close, but always there's going to be calibrations. Wow. You can always get better at whatever you're doing. Always. There's always room for improvement. And as long as you have that mindset, you'll never, you know, pat yourself on the back and feel self-satisfied, because we all fall short of the glory of God. Allah deserves so much more from us. And in that way, it's just a recognition of our own human fallibility, frailty, and shortcomings. Qusur and taqsir. You know, the fuqaha differentiate between qusur and taqsir. Qusur is when you don't have the means. Taqsir is when you have the means and yet you don't fulfill the mandate.
Sheikh Miftaah, if you want to, I just ask Shaykh Hamza for a minute. You know, right before we went on, we were just complimenting the work, the writing, and then he showed us some of the ancient work, that how scholars of the past value their assignment and the excellence of work they did in publishing some of the writing. And Shaykh Hamza graciously got up and he brought some of the literature. If you can, at least, if we can have the audience appreciate that, Sheikh.
Well, I mean, what you said, I appreciated. You said, because we were talking about critical editions and books that are well published, and how much nicer it is to read them, like the actual experience of reading a book that is well presented. Because in our tradition, we don't differentiate between form and content. Form and content are both important. People in this culture now, a lot of it doesn't matter the form. It's the important thing is the content. No, the form, Allah put us in this form. Ahsan taqweem. You know, he made us in the most perfect form. The form is for what? It's to contain the content. But he made the form with ihsan. And so the form, and that's why the Muslims were so, they loved to beautify everything. Their bowls were beautiful. Their homes were beautiful. The Prophet ﷺ said, beautify your homes and adorn your clothes, because I want you to be like a beauty mark amongst humanity. It's such a beautiful hadith. In other words, they see you and they see beauty, because Allah is Jameel yuhibbul Jamal. And the man who asked him if wearing nice clothes and nice shoes was that from arrogance, and the Prophet said, no, inna Allah Jamilun wa yuhibbul Jamal. In other words, it's your love of beauty which is from God, because God is beautiful and God loves beauty. So when you love beauty, you're expressing something about your Creator. And so doing the form should be beautiful, and the content should be beautiful. That or majestic, because sometimes form has to be majestic as well. So Allah is Dhul Jalali wal Ikram. He has both those qualities. But it's so you were saying that, and I said, you know, people sometimes will say, oh, it's extravagant to waste money on producing things so well and things like that. And for me, it's like, you know, in the Shafi'i madhab, I don't know about the other madhab, but in the Shafi'i madhab, I was told this by a Shafi'i scholar, Shaykh Abdullah al-Qadi, that there's no israf in perfume. Like if you buy perfume, you can buy expensive perfume because it's sadaqah for others.
Ibn Abidin talks about the Prophet spending 1/3 on perfume.
Exactly. So you put a little perfume on, you smell it initially, but then it's gone. But other people smell it throughout the day.
Yeah.
So, and the same as dressing well. Like Muslims have lost the sense, because now everybody dresses like slobs because they dress for themselves. and that shows you the value that they hold themselves in. Like you see people now, and it's just amazing. They look like they just got up out of bed.
And that's the style.
Shaykh Hamza, you know that statement of Aisha? You know that statement of Aisha radiallahu anha when she saw these young people in Medina dressed like Slavs and they're walking like with so much humility and Aisha radiallahu anha asked, "Who are these people?" They said, "Ubbad wa zuhad Ahl Medina." And Aisha radiallahu was like, "What is it? Atqwa? That's not the piety that we know." And she says, "كان عمر بن الخطاب أزهد وأتقى وأعبد منهم ولكن إذا مشى أسرع وإذا تكلم أسمع وإذا ضرب أوجع." You know, like when he walked with pace. When he spoke, people heard him. He had a presentation, and exactly what you say it. And whenever we hear the attribute of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his Sahaba, we always surrounded by beauty. You know, like you cannot take your eyes off the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His hair was combed, his elegance, his presence, his beard, all these beautiful things. But Sheikh, just
even the scar on that from being stricken when he was at Uhud, they said even the scar actually enhanced his beauty.
Wow. Sheikh, well, that's amazing. I never read that. That's
in Hamziyah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Sheikh, so again, I'm teasing you one more time just so you can show us the work that you had read, the literature that was written in gold. You were telling us, how was that put together back in the day?
Well, I was saying that the ulama used to, we had a tradition of scribes. So scribes were actually very important throughout Islamic history and there were factories of scribes. They in the Ottoman period, they would have a factory with like 400 scribes. So if you had a 400-page book, each scribe would do one page in the same script.
Wow.
Because they were calligraphers. So they would do like a naskhi, and then they would put it together. So they could literally do one book in like an hour.
Wow.
And that was one of the reasons why they didn't want to introduce the printing press, because it would destroy all the scribe guilds. In any case, they often, I was just saying that if you look, like this is a devotional text here, and this is gold ink, and it's real gold, right?
Wow.
So this is from Morocco, and wherever there's Allah or Muhammad, you can see they wrote it in gold.
Wow. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
So you can see that if it glares there. See the gold?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Sheikh, you're lucky. I was going to say, Sheikh, you're lucky you're Maliki. You don't have to know zakat on that. If you're Hanafi, you have to pay zakat.
So and then also, like, this is my favorite one, because this is a student's notebook from the Qarawiyyin, and you can just see just look at that.
Beautiful.
The Itqan and Ihsan. That's his notebook. Those are the Sheikh's. He's writing in the red what the Sheikh said in the class. And again, he put things in gold. Whenever he has Allah or the Prophet ﷺ, he put it in gold ink. I mean, it's just amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Sheikh, well, we'll pivot, Sheikh, to
this one's earlier, but again, it's
That's your favorite. That's your favorite, right?
Well, this one, because it's the oldest. It's this is about 1,200 years old, maybe a little older, and it's written on vellum, which is like gazelle skin. So it's from Surah At-Talaq, and it's in the Kufic script before they had the diacritic.
Where's that the Greek writing that you have?
Yeah, so this is another vellum one. This is an early translation of very early translation of Surah Al-Ikhlas that was done in Greek.
Sheikh, you know how to read Greek?
I can read it, yeah, alhamdulillah. Epe otos esti theos es. Say epe otos esti theos es. God is one, otos, yeah. Theos olos furos. I had to ask a friend of mine who's a Greek scholar what olos furos meant, and he said it meant like full. So samad, one of the translations of samad is the one who's not hollow. And then uk egenesen, neither begets, ude egenenon, or is begotten, ude egeneto, homoios otesis, and nothing's.
Sheikh, people are trying to keep up with your English writing. Now you got this.
No, I had 2 years of Greek, I did Greek in high school and I did Greek in college, but my Greek's very weak.
But you know, nobody ever knew that when you were in high school before. I don't know when you converted to Islam and what part of your life, but all that heritage that your parents raised you with, the education you got, like khiyarum fil jahiliyyah, khiyarum fil Islam. You brought that talent and that education into the tradition, which really helps not just yourself, but all the listeners and viewers and students. That's a part of you that, you know, as you, I don't know if you realize that, you know how Musa alayhi salam was created for a moment. وَاصْطَنَعْتُكَ لِنَفْسِي. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made you go through certain experiences when you were younger to where you are in as a scholar now, that we're all learning from Shaykh. So we're indebted to that experience, to your parents too.
Well, I mean, my father was, he was just an amazing student, and he loved knowledge, and he loved, he particularly was enamored of philosophy and literature. He was a professor when I was very young. He left it and went into business, but he had studied at Columbia University in that traditional liberal arts great books program that they had, and he'd studied with Mark Van Doren, who was a great scholar of Shakespeare. And so my father was a lifelong student of Shakespeare. He wrote on Shakespeare. And then he was, you know, just somebody who just loved knowledge and books. And, you know, he was fluent in Latin. He read the Bible in Latin. He, I think he really instilled in me, and he had a massive library. So I was able to dig into the books. I mean, I lived with him for a period because he divorced my mother when I was very young. But he was around, like so I did spend time. And then for a period, I lived with him for a few years. So I think that helped a lot, you know, but, and then my mother was an avid reader. Just, I never remember her watching television. Neither of them ever watched television.
So would your mom read like a book a week or something? How would you guys do this? Like,
yeah, my mom read, my mom was a political activist, so she was, I think that's probably why they ended up getting divorced, because my mom was very left. My dad was more traditional conservative, not like a Republican. He couldn't stand either party, but he was more a Burkean type. I think he started out very liberal, and when he met my mom, he was very liberal, but he became more conservative. That didn't work because my mom was more almost on the radical side. I mean, my sister, you know, like my mom had a picture of Malcolm X in the house, Emilio Zapata, you know, the kind of revolutionaries. So
that's interesting how you had both parents with different ideologies raising you.
And I'm ambidextrous, so it's always enabled. I think it's helped me navigate. Because I actually do, like, I read both sides, I listen to both sides.
People don't know that about you. And just be honest, people don't know that about you.
I've read a lot of left. You know, I mean, I've read Marcuse, I've read, you know, Derrida, I've read Foucault, I've read, you know, a lot of Chomsky. You know, Zinn, you know, Howard Zinn. But then I want to see the other side too. And part of the problem with our world is they just get entrenched in one side. And the thing, for me, the best state would be a purple state in America. It wouldn't be totally right or totally left, because you need that dialectic. If it goes too much to one side, you need that dialectic to keep things balanced.
How do the Christians do? Because I think they're struggling, and we're going to follow their same struggle. I'm sorry to go into this route, but like, to have that purple state, not even a tradition of Christian Catholics and Protestants are able to establish that type of setup yet. So where do the Muslims fall into this discussion then?
Well, I mean, America is a very complicated place. It takes a long time to navigate this place. And part of the reason why we're doing what we're doing at Zaytuna is to try to help students understand what's going on, because we've reached a point of nihilism in our culture, and nothing's there's no glue to hold anything together. And so things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are filled with passion's intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. I mean, I think Yeats really got to the heart of what we're dealing with. Things are breaking down, and things do dissipate and break down. Civilizations are curvilinear, like the lifespan of a human being. Civilizations have those lifespans. They reach an apex and then they decline. And so we're on this country it's in a serious decline. We can see it. There's a decline in our politicians. I would just recommend for anybody to after Ramadan, to go on YouTube and watch, for instance, a current politician's speech. Joe Biden's as good as any. And then look at like Kennedy's address at American University about the importance of peace. And just look at the quality. I mean, you don't need to be a genius to see the difference between a real statesman and an educated person who's speaking with beautiful rhetoric and saying very profound things, and somebody who, come on, man, no joke, you know.
Sheikh,
Mijan, we inshallah, if we can ask Sheikh a few questions about Ramadan before it gets too long.
What?
About Ramadan, Sheikh, how your Ramadan is going and how your flow in Ramadan is, Sheikh. And as you know, all of us that we're always reading and trying to find out how other scholars and how our teachers spend their Ramadan and how they get barakah in their Ramadan, and how people can benefit from that as well. Because I think the audience definitely, inshallah, as well, will benefit a lot from hearing about, as we're inching into the last 15 days and so on and so forth. Sheikh, what advice can you give us?
Well, the Quran calls them ayyam al-ma'dudat, and the ayyam is what they call jam'u qillah. You know, it's a plural of paucity. You know, there's not a lot of days, and they go very fast, as you know. Time is speeding up. Yataqarab az-zaman. It's one of the signs of the latter days. And so people are, I can't believe it's already the 15th or 16th. Tonight's the 17th, right? Yeah. So actually it's Badr. So we're celebrating the great victory of the Prophet Yawm al-Furqan. So I think Ramadan, one of the things I love about the Prophet ﷺ, his ibadah didn't really change in Ramadan that much. I mean, basically, he was so consistent. And that's something amazing and something to aspire to. So there's definitely, you know, we have what's called barakah zamaniya and barakah makaniya. So there's special barakah in place and time. So like Jum'ah has, you know, a special barakah, and then there's an hour in Jum'ah, not maybe a 60-minute hour, but a sa'a Jum'ah, even if it's a moment, that there's special intensity, and Allah will accept the prayer. When they ask Yaqub to make dua for them, he says sa'astaghfiru, you know, is sa or sofa?
Sofa astaghfir.
Sofa astaghfiru, yeah, sofa. So he used the tasweef, the scene, for sofa, because in the commentaries they say he wanted to wait till sahar to do it. So he could have done it right then, but he wanted that special time of barakah where there's more. Wow. And so Ramadan has that, you know, it has that barakah in it that is palpable. I mean, I felt it the day before and then the first day of Ramadan, you can just feel, I genuinely experienced a time dilation that was just palpable. There just felt like there was more time in the day than the previous day. And so that aspect is one of the great blessings of Ramadan. And then sufidat ash-shayateen, you know, sulsilat, sufidat ash-shayateen. Not all of them, obviously. Imam al-Qurtubi says, he was asked, why is there so much fitans even in Ramadan? And he said, because not all the shayateen are the marada but there's still shayateen active out there. And then there's nafs hawash and dunya. So the coalition, I call it nafs ko, you know, nafs ko, dunya ko, hawa ko, iblis ko, and haram ko. So those 5, they have a corporate coalition. Like they work together. I have these corporations that work together. Yeah,
intertwined.
They don't need 5 against me. One of them was sufficient to knock me down.
Exactly. And so that's what I said about the deadly sins. My dad used to say, one's enough to kill you.
Yeah, Sheikh, since you lived with the scholars and overseas and even in America, and I'm sure some of the most
Murabt al-Hajj's practice didn't change in Ramadan.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. I'm sure you were inspired by even just seeing
he
them.
was so consistent. And if you told me anywhere in the world where I was, if I knew the time in Mauritania, I knew what he would do.
Wow.
What he would be doing. His consistency was so amazing. And the amount of ibadah that he did with the scholarship, because as you know, devotion and scholarship, the weight is on the scholarship for the scholar. His devotion is study more than it is actual ritual practices. But he had both. I mean, he was a true abid, devotee, and just the amount of Quran he recited, the amount of dhikr, his tongue, I never saw him not doing dhikr. If he wasn't teaching, he was doing dhikr.
And Sheikh, it takes a lot of himma, a lot of motivation.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Yeah, it's himma. Yeah.
How do you
but most people, like, they're I mean, like us, like our pre-Ramadan routine is like, it's almost like preseason. It's really off, right? We're hardly show up for the game. We don't have a pre-game routine. We hardly make it on time. And then, we're just there. And we score, we think we scored a lot of points, but it's just because the bench is playing against us,
so
right?
You're doing a Salah ala Nabi pass. Like the Christians have a Hail Mary pass.
Just try to make it. But so we we definitely need some form of change in Ramadan, right? So or else, we'll still be stuck in the preseason. So Ramadan becomes a Hail Mary for us, and it's 30 days of it. There's so many actions and deeds a person can do and commit to. What is something that you find most effective for people to commit to in the month of Ramadan, and that has an effect in Ramadan and hopefully outside the month of Ramadan as well? MashaAllah.
Well, I think the single most important thing is guarding the tongue.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I would put that at the very top. After obviously food and drink, but if you don't guard your tongue, then the food and drink, you're just wasting your time. So it's really important to guard the tongue, because the tongue is the tongue is the greatest gift, but it's also the greatest tribulation for the human being. I mean, the tongue is what makes us, it's our tarjuman, it's the translator of our thoughts. And the animals don't have that. We, like the cat, you can hear it like meowing, and it's a blessing that it can bother you. It either wants to go outside or food, but that's pretty much it. It's not talking, like I'm having an existential crisis. I actually think I might be a dog trapped in a cat's body. It's not giving us any, it's so humans. Yeah, we're rational beings, and we can think deep thoughts and contemplate infinity, which is what a gift. And so the tongue is in, Socrates said that the teeth are like bars on a cell that God has put the tongue in, and that you should only release it on good behavior.
Wow.
So that إنما جعل اللسان على الفؤاد دليلا. But
right.
All the scholars that pass, like you said, Socrates, but even Ghazali, chapters on the tongue. Then he connects it to the aql. Is the tongue is it the mindset that is corrupt? Is it the heart that's corrupt, that's making the tongue speak in a way that's speaking?
Well, all the limbs, as you know, the hadith, all the limbs shake in the morning.
Yeah.
Tell the tongue, ittaqillah fina.
Yeah.
Because if the tongue goes astray, everything goes astray. So I think one of the worst qualities of modern people is just al-khawd fil batil.
Wow.
I mean, they really, there's so much batil. And the Prophet ﷺ said it towards the latter days. He said that people ya'kulu bi kasbi alsinatihim, that they would eat with the cusp of their alsina, which is amazing, because now you have all these people, that's all they do. They just talk, and they get YouTube things, so they join the Million Club, and then they get money and monetize their talking. And then they have to say things to get people on and push the envelope.
I'm trying to get that 1 million YouTube subscribers, but I can't get past
don't worry
100.
about it. Just do what's right. Even if you have 10 sincere followers, it's better than, people say, oh, so-and-so's got all the Lady Gaga or whoever it is, whoever the latest iteration is of their waham. They have millions and millions of people. What do they mean? I remember a Saudi, Isa Bogari, who's in marketing. He said to me, if you look at somebody like Zbigniew Brzezinski, he's got like maybe 5,000 followers, but he said every one of them is an influencer.
Wow.
And he said, whereas, somebody like, I don't know, Miley Cyrus or whoever has, 10 million or 20 million or.
Sheikh, all these singers' names. I'm impressed.
Well, I mean, we're surrounded by this stuff.
Sheikh,
There's a billboard on the way, to where I drive with, Las Vegas, and it's got all these.
Shaykh Hamza, Shaykh Abdullah, he wants a billboard with his face too now, and with Miftaah. He's like, just drive right there. That's
really?
But
No. The story about St. Thomas Aquinas. He was very gullible, apparently, and so the monks used to like play jokes on him. So one day, one of the monks looking out the window, he said, "Oh my God, a flying cow!" And Aquinas ran to the window, and they all started laughing. And he said, "Better to believe in cows that fly than in monks that lie."
Oh. I hope Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us all in the truth, especially me, and speak the truth. But
there was Imam al-Awza'i was in Lebanon, and he was passing by, and this man was saying, "Basal ahla min asal," like onion sweeter than honey. And he said to one of his students, "Yahsibu an al-kadhib jaiz fi mithli hada?" Does he think a lie is permissible in this? There's no onion sweeter than honey.
There's no such thing like that.
Sheikh Hamza, assalamu alaikum. I want to say salam to you and then get off screen. Sheikh Hamza, Jazakallah khair for hosting us when we came over. My brother has been bullying me, the one on top of you, Baijan. He talks a lot. It's good you talk about tongue. He's been bullying me ever since I was a kid. Can you tell him how impressive I was when I was reading Mizan al-Amal to you? Please, just tell him to get off of me a bit.
I was like, I bet you made so many mistakes reading Shaykh Hamza that he disqualified you. But I don't believe it, because since he came back, he's been talking about the experience with you, read the book to you, got the honor to sit next to your feet and benefit from you. And I'm like, the tour was important, but the reading to you was, I heard you close the door and you corrected these people.
No. Sheikh, please say something.
Yeah, he was average.
No, mashallah. He read well, alhamdulillah. And the Arabs say al-hanu min qari, like he makes more mistakes than somebody reading a book. Arabic grammar, as you all know, is not easy. So I was very impressed. I think all of you, mashallah, may Allah bless you, increase you, elevate you, increase your knowledge. And but grammar is very important. Logic is really important. Rhetoric is our master science in our tradition. We really place rhetoric at the pinnacle. Throughout the history in both Western and Muslim civilization, these three arts, which are called the tools of learning, alat al-ulum al-ala, the instrumental arts. Dorothy Sayers called them the lost tools of learning. These arts are really important, and they're being lost. There's no logic. People don't teach logic anymore. You couldn't have things like what you have now, where people think that somebody can be a woman who's not a woman. If they taught logic in schools, because logic teaches you to define things, and there's a clear definition of biologically that differentiates. I mean, if you take a skeleton from 10,000 years ago, we can determine whether it was a male or a female. So all these so-called transgender people, if people dig them up 10,000 years from now, they're not going to say, oh, this was a woman or a man. They'll say this was a woman or a man based on the bone structure. So yeah, so we're in a denial of reality, and that comes from a loss of developing the intellect and helping people get better at these things. So logic's really important, but grammar is the foundation. If we don't have grammar, we lose everything, and that's why the Muslims were so they were really, really, for want of a better word, they were obsessed with grammar. I mean, they really, and all the books, as you know, you go into any of these books. I mean, I can open up pretty much any book and just, so here, Bismillah, وَجَعَلَ الظُّلُمَاتِ وَالنُّورِ الثالث معنى الصير كقولك جعلت المتاع بعضه على بعض وتحقيقه ها هنا خلق ثانيا وصفا لشيء مخلوق أولا وذلك أنه خلق الكعبة وجودا أولا خلق الكعبة وجودا أولا ثم خلق فيها صفات ثانيا وخلق عمل أول والثاني وجعل خاص والثاني خبر عن الصفات. So it's all grammar. It's all grammar.
And then if you know grammar, you just enjoy it next level.
What's that?
When you have the grammar background, the enjoyment is next
level. And then all the distinctions and nuances and the possibilities in the actual Quran, because of the beautiful elasticity of the Arabic language, the plasticity of it. It's just so malleable to multiple interpretations, and that's why they saw so much in it. It's amazing.
Sheikh, I want to say ask one more thing. So one of the things that you were mentioning about the tip for in the last 10 nights is to guard the tongue, and I think that's an important thing because the last 10 nights we have like the sukut of the awliya. They were just staying quiet. Like the Prophet ﷺ was the greatest da'i to walk on the face of the earth, but his silence was more than his speech, right? So you know, I think the last 10 nights, because one of the topics was like, what should we do in the last 10 nights of Ramadan? Maybe minimizing our speech. Another thing, Sheikh, I remember you mentioned a poem of Shakespeare in one of your speeches, and I think that's also important because also your company that's around you, right? So like making sure the people around you are people that will help you in the last 10 nights. So like removing the toxic friends or anything, distractions, like and then that's why i'tikaf is there in the last 10 nights, to remove yourself from the family, from your work, everything. So I'm gonna say that I want you to please. I don't know what the poem really means, but I memorized this poem from one of your speeches, and I'm gonna say it to you, and then you can explain it, and then you can speak about it in terms of the last 10 nights. So Shakespeare, he says, you know, those friends thou hast, and their adoption tried, grapple them to thy soul with hoops of steel, but do not dull thy palm with entertainment, and of each new hatched unfledged comrade. Can you explain that?
Yeah, because that's too much going on for us.
Well, he's just giving advice to his son about just watch the company that you keep, because you're going to have fair-weathered friends. You're going to have people that just you're a source of entertainment for them, and so just be on guard about who the much better than Shakespeare is, you know, al-mar'u ala dini khalilihi falyanzur ahadukum biman yukhalil.
Okay.
You know, like, and that tradition is how Imam at-Tirmidhi, I think that's one of the last hadiths that he has in the Shema.
Yeah. Okay. Shema. Yes.
Yeah. So it's a really important hadith. عن المرء لا تسأل وسأل عن قرينه فكل قرين بالمقارن يقتدي. There's a famous story of Muhammad al-Amin al-Shinqiti, who was the great mufassir, and his son told me this because I was friends with his son who passed away last year. Beautiful man, Sheikh Muhammad Mukhtar, and I really were working on. I asked Sheikh Abdullah Ali, who teaches Maliki fiqh at Zaytuna and other things, but you know, he's a very serious student of knowledge, and I asked him if he would translate that book. It's called Taqrib al-Wusul ila Ilm al-Usul. It's one of the best introductions to Usul al-Fiqh, because Usul al-Fiqh is so important, and without Usul, a lot of people don't understand how sophisticated our Sharia is. So without usul, we just lose our way. And so Sheikh Muhammad Amin al-Shinqiti, who was a polymath, he was an encyclopedic scholar of Islam and taught in the Haram for many years. But he was in Sudan, and he asked one of the Sudanese, and the Sudanese have great reverence for the Mauritanian scholars. So he asked one of the Sudanese, "Where are you from?" And he said, "Min al-balad al-mubarak Khurtum." From the blessed city of Khurtum. And he said, what made it blessed? And he said, Allah dhakaraha fil Quran, sanasimuhu ala al-Khurtum. So he said, Antu tudhakiruni bi mughani al-lusus. And so then he asked him, who was the mughani al-lusus? And he said, it was, these brigands, highway brigands, got captured and they were brought to the caliph, and so he ordered them to be executed because they were qata' turuq. So one of them said, لا 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 تقطع رقبتي أنا كنت فقط مغنيهم, like I was only singing for them. In other words, I didn't participate in the activities, right?
Yeah.
And so he said, طيب غني لنا, like, let's hear you sing. And so he sang, عن المرء لا تسأل وسل عن قريني. So the caliph said, أنت حج على نفسك.
Can you translate that, Sheikh, for people that don't understand that part?
That on a man, don't ask about, but ask about the company he keeps, because everybody is on the company, on the way of the company they keep. And so he said, you're a hujjah, you're a proof against yourself. And so he sent him off to be executed with them.
My God, he got himself in trouble. Sheikh, in the last half of Ramadan, in the last 10 nights especially, the aspect of dua is, what have you learned from your scholars as a tradition with dua? Like, there's this understood supplication. People, when they go for Hajj or Umrah, Ramadan, last 10 nights, people start printing duas from the online, just reading prayers and supplications. But what is the correct manner and the right mindset and presence of heart when we supplicate to make it more acceptable and more appealing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
Well, Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi mentions that when he went to Palestine and he went to the Masjid al-Aqsa, and during Ramadan, like the whole mosque, everybody was crying. And he thought maybe the Moroccans are just hard-hearted, because he didn't see that in the Moroccans. And then he went to the sheikh and he asked him, and he said, well, if you can't cry, then you should at least tabaka. And he wasn't, because as you know, the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, like when you read the sajda ayah of going down, they fall down in sajda crying. So, privately with yourself, if you can't cry, you should at least tabaka, at least attempt to cry. So softening the heart is one of the things that dua does. And dua can be very intoxicating, as you all, I'm sure, are aware of. If you supplicate, really supplicate and call on Allah, there's a ladha in it, a pleasure, the ladhat al-munajat, they call it, the pleasure of just speaking with your Lord. And but I think the best du'as are the du'as of the Prophet ﷺ, learning them, memorizing them, because he asked for the best things. And he gave us so many incredible du'as, especially the what they call adiyat al-ahwal, the occasional supplications are amazing. And anybody who does those will be written from the dhakiran Allah kathira. The other thing is man shaghaluhu al-Quran an mas'alati, right? If you're more preoccupied with the Quran on asking Allah, then Allah will give you more than he gives the people who are supplicating. So the best dhikr is Quran. The best Quran is in the prayer. And then whether the fard, obviously fard first, and then nafila, and then tilawa, waratil al-Quran tartila. learning to recite the Quran properly. If you recite the Quran with tajweed, it will have an effect on your heart. You don't have to understand it. But the tajweed is very important, of just getting the mad al-lazim, the huruf al-muqatta'at, getting those correct. It's going to resonate and actually impact your heart. So those are really important. Learning the ahkam, and the ahkam of tajweed, they take a little time, but it's one of the easier sciences. And it's amazing how few ahkam are in Fatiha. I mean, Allah makes the Fatiha a very easy chapter to read in terms of tajweed. So that's really important. And then I think charity is also really important during Ramadan. It's important throughout, but the ajwadu ma kana Rasulullah, kana ajwadu nas, right? Kana ajwadu nas wa ajwadu ma yakunu fi Ramadan. And the most generous was in Ramadan. So he was generous all the time, but he was always exceptionally generous.
I would love to hear your interpretation on Ar-Rih al-Mursal. Like he was.
Ar-Rih al-Mursala is that wind that brings, it fecundates, it brings to life, it brings all the pollen and brings to life all of the vegetation, and then sustenance comes from that. So there's bad wind and there's good wind. So hawalaina la alayna, make it for us, not against us. That was his dua when the winds came. And winds, Allah destroys with winds. Winds are terrifying. And if you ever hear howling winds, I mean, they're quite unnerving.
Sheikh, if I can ask Sheikh, a lot of us youngsters, I said us because even Sheikh Abdullah and Mufti Rahman are not youngsters anymore. They're old.
No, we're not.
You're young at heart. But the youngsters, and of course the adults as well, a lot of people are just struggling, even in Ramadan. There's a lot of challenges.
Right.
Hardly able to, make dua, hardly able to take out time for your family. There's just so much going on. This country the world keeps us so busy. First 15 days have gone by. Perhaps we have not done much for our own ibadah. And there's a sense of guilt that comes with it. What can you tell us to lift us up and to make us feel like there's so much more to live for in the month of Ramadan? There's so much more to take from. Just something motivational for us to get inspired to take the most of these last days, because that would be a true loss if we cannot benefit from these days.
Well, the Imam Ali's dua when he came into Ramadan was that Allah made him free of asqam and gave him faragh, like not preoccupy him. And then he said, "Waradini bi yasiran min an-nawm," and content me with less sleep. So it's a really blessed time. It's a time, there's something called nadama in Arabic. The nadama is remorse. And the real remorse is on Yom al-Taghabun, when people realize that they were cheated out of so much. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Ni'matani maghbunun fihima kathirun min an-nas, as-sihhatu wal-faragh." There are two blessings that many people are cheated out of: health and free time, leisure time where you're not preoccupied with other things. And shaitan is the one that's going to take your leisure time. Health is generally, people can harm their health, but sometimes it's from Allah. There's a ibtila from Allah, but very often it's just bad health, because people aren't living properly. One of the really important things about Ramadan is that you should lose weight. If you look, there's a very interesting, I think he's a chiropractor, but he's a very interesting man, Dr. Berg. I don't know if you know about him, Dr. Berg, B-E-R-G. He has a very nice talk on Ramadan, the benefits of Ramadan from a health. He's not a Muslim. He's just talking about the benefits of Ramadan from a health perspective. And he really gives these amazing benefits and of intermittent fasting, what they call intermittent fasting. But one of the things he says that you will not get the benefit if you don't eat well.
Wow.
So it's very important to diminish the amount of food you're eating, and then to eat healthy food, like not to eat a lot. People eat more in Ramadan. In Muslim countries, they consume more food in Ramadan in some places. And then it becomes just a horrible. I mean, I've been finding I've been having dinner because we've been just breaking the fast and not even wanting to eat, just because that's the thing about fasting. Your stomach shrinks. You just don't need a lot of food.
Yeah, your appetite's done.
And so, and the worst thing is to do ibadah on a full stomach.
Yeah.
It's not pleasant. So it's good to be light for Ramadan. You get people come in and, they've overeaten. And they come and then it's, it can.
You brought the book on Mizan Amal. In that chapter of Ghazali talks about fast. And in the fasting, he says how it is better to fast every other day, where the Prophet ﷺ prescribed the Sahabi not to fast every day. And then he tells him why. Ghazali says the reason, because many reasons the Prophet ﷺ said that Sawm Dawood is the better option. But then he said that fasting every day is easier than fasting every other day, because that one day you did partake in food, you enjoyed it, and then the next day you have to sacrifice. Allah doesn't just want you to go on a diet, but He wants you to do it for His sake.
Right.
Lose it for His sake. Everything goes back. And I found that to be like so profound that Ghazali caught on to that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he was a great genius. And Miftaah Scholars, Allah gave him many openings. Yeah, حُفَّتَ الْجَنَّةُ بِالْمَكَارِهِ وَحُفَّتَ النَّارُ بِالشَّهَوَاتِ. This is one of the foundational aspects of life, that struggle is part of life. Struggle is what makes us stronger. In order to get physically stronger, we have to create resistance. And so Allah gives us all of these challenges to make us stronger spiritually. And that's part of what dunya is. The dunya is filled with troubles and tribulations and challenges. It's the nature of the abode. And so fasting is one of those things that will make you stronger. It'll make you stronger because you're able to control yourself in a way that other people can't. I mean, I'm always amazed at when non-Muslims find out we fast without water even. They get shocked, as if like, how could you do that? It's.
I hate to say this, but when I went to the Caribbean, I landed in Barbados. I was doing Tarawih in Dominica one year. So the taxi driver that picked me up said, "Oh, you guys are going to fast, And he's speaking in his accent. And I said, yeah. He said, no water, man. I said, no water, man. He says, no food, man. I said, no food, man. And then he's like, then his wife was he said, oh, on the way, he's like, I got to pick up my wife. So he picked up his wife. And because he's from that culture, he's so open about talking about his family. And he's like, how about relationship? I'm like, and of course, he used a different language. And I'm like, no, it's all prevented. Desires have to be killed in the day. And he was like, Mom, that's difficult. He's like, that. So there's a part where Allah, not only is He getting rid of our appetite, but Allah wants to crush the desires, where it's purely done for His sake. And that I didn't think about it that bad. Like, I wasn't married. I'm like, I don't know why this guy is thinking like that. I'm just a young man, I'm just 18 years old, going to do tarawih. For me, it's like, what's food and how am I going to drink? What am I going to drink at iftar? But really, like, someone that's coffee addiction, someone that's smoking addiction, someone has pornography addiction, someone that has any addiction, Ramadan is some of the. Sheikh, I love your input on this, because I want to learn how people can break those habits and those bad addictions and build on good habits.
Well, one of the things about addiction, many people do what they call cold turkey. And you will find, I've seen this. There was a place, Victory Outreach. It was this Christian place where I went to school down in Southern California. And these Mexicans who were, they were like hardcore drug addicts, and they would find Jesus, and the next day they would just stop everything. And so religion has that power. If somebody really is willing to submit to God, then they have the power to overcome even the worst addictions. And one of the things, pornography will destroy your inner eye. It will destroy, because you will not get rid of those images. And so you have to really guard yourself. The eye, Murabit al-Hajj said, "Al-ayn la tata'allaqu bi-kabira." He told me this. "Al-aynu la tata'allaqu bi-kabira, walakinnaha asra'u jariha li-ifsad al-qalb."
Wow.
So looking at something is a saghira that you shouldn't look at. And I wouldn't say, if you're looking at pornography, that you're entering into the realm of kabir. Because for a couple of reasons. One, it's you're looking at people their aura purposefully. So the first is for you, the second is against you. That's accidental. That's like if you're walking and you see a beautiful woman, or the woman, a man, whatever, and then they look away. So the first one was for you, just Allah's beauty. You witness something of Allah's beauty. But the second one, if إِذَا تَسْتَمِرُّ فِيهِ, like if you continue that, then it becomes sinful if you look upon something lustfully. And so looking, there's a pathology called peeping Toms. And this is in the books, like people that want to watch secretly other people having in intimate relations. That's what they turn you into, a peeping Tom. And so, and historically, people couldn't get away with this because they used to have these places in cities that were covered up, that the windows were covered up, and people would go in with their overcoats and a hat so nobody could see them because they were so ashamed. Whereas what the internet has done is it's opened up all of this facade. And now we've become a shameless society where pornography is openly done. And so it's really tragic because these young kids that are growing up on this, it will have such harmful effects on their marital relationships if they ever get married, their view of women, because all pornography, it degrades both men and women, but it's particularly degrading to the woman. It's degrading for both a male and a female, but it's particularly degrading for the woman. And, according to Chris Hedges' book that I read, and that second chapter, I regret reading it because it was just so intense in its graphic discussion. But he was trying to make a point about what's happened to the culture. Pornography today is not like the 1950s or something where it was Playboy magazine. Pornography is violent. Much of it is violent against women. There's a place apparently in San Francisco where you can live stream women being tortured. You can pay to watch women being tortured. And what kind of society is that? What has happened to people in their hearts that this is the type environment? So I know this is a problem with the young people, when the appetites are obviously stronger, the shahwa is stronger. That's just human nature. When you're young, these things are more troublesome. But we have to resist these things. And people are going to be in these horrible cycles of perpetrating something, feeling guilty, having a lot of self-loathing, which is not healthy. So they just start hating themselves and feeling sick to their stomach. So those things, if you're freed of those things, you're going to just feel much better about yourself. And it's liberating. It's also, there's nothing better than self-discipline, just in terms of just really controlling your nafs. There's a real sense of achievement, accomplishment in doing that. Even for one day, to not backbite for one day and to finish that day, you will feel a pride in that achievement. That's healthy pride. Yeah. I got through this day without speaking ill of anybody. And that's
the element of nafs lawama. It just, you feel so
exactly. And those are cycles, and Iblis plays on those. I mean, Iblis just loves the self-loathing. You're pathetic. You're never going to be able to do it. Wow. And this is the self-talk that the nafs and shaitan are in cooperation on this. You're never going to do it. Forget it. You're a failure. You just have to keep struggling. It's very important. And Shaykh, go ahead.
Teenagers are falling into that trap now, and they're losing self-confidence. They feel depressed, and it's the same small habits. And I say this often in my speeches, and I'm trying to coach you on this, Shaykh, is that it's for wilaya, it's one, two problems only. Like a person can be in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, amma man khafa maqama rabbih wa nahan nafsa anil hawa. It's like, it's not the ayah, it's not extended where there's a long discussion. Wa nahan nafsa anil hawa. Like the first step on the hawa and the next step in Jannah. So it's like the small things, like people sometimes they make big of it, like, oh, I gotta get rid of my habits. Like, what are we talking about? It's that one overarching issue that's causing you anger, that's causing you frustration. Go ahead, Sheikh. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say that the thing about self-loathing and depression, if you're doing things that are wrong, your soul's going to feel it. And one of the things about the materialistic science I was just listening to, we have our first medical graduate this year, and she did a little clip about how she was prepared by Zaytuna for medical school.
Wow.
But one of the things she said is that, and it was really nice to hear her say this. She said that she just realized that because of the materialistic foundations of Western medicine, that there's no understanding of the soul, that all mental health is looked at as this material problem. So you have you have imbalances in your blood chemistry, or your serotonin levels have dipped, or this or that. And she was saying how, because Islam has a whole psychosocial dimension that's spiritual, and so if you're engaged in haram activities, you're going to feel horrible about yourself. It's just as simple as that. And as you move out of it, that's why the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, للصائم فرحتان فرحة حينما يفطر وفرحة حينما يلقى ربه. The farha, I love this from Imam Nawawi. He said that the farha of finishing the fast was not the food, it was the accomplishment.
Yeah.
That's the real farha, that you did it. You reached the victory line, and it's the sweetness of victory, right? And ma'asiyah is the bitterness of defeat, because Iblis won that round. But the important thing to know is that this is a 15-round match with Iblis. It doesn't end till you die. So if you lose the third round, I mean, the nice thing about boxing is that it's a horrible sport. But the nice thing about it is you can be doing terrible for 14 rounds, but in that 15 round, you just lay him down. And that's the comeback. And that's the way you have to be with Iblis. This is a 15-round match, and you have to be fortified, and you have to be ready, and just get in there and box his ears off. And if he boxes your ears off for one round, just know, there's going to be another round, and it doesn't end till the last breath.
Wow. Mufti Saab, go ahead, Mufti Saab. I know you're listening. I haven't given you guys a chance to answer.
There's one of the Arab poets, he said, "Nun al-hawani min al-hawa masruqatun, fa idha ishtahayta laqita hawana." That the hawan, which is like humiliation, the noon of it was stolen from hawa, because hawa is, if you add a noon to it, it becomes hawan. He said, when your passions get the best of you, you will be humiliated.
Subhanallah. So the month of Ramadan, basically, one of the signs of the effects of staying hungry is you can overcome your desires and obsessions, right? That's why the less you eat, that's why Aisha said that أول فتنة حدثت في هذه الأمة بعد النبي الشبع. Like the first fitna that came to this ummah after the Prophet left this world was people eating to their full. So you have the month of Ramadan during the day for that, but Allah also gave us the last 10 nights, which are where you're eating. You can eat in the last 10 nights, right? You can eat. And so, Sheikh, one thing that when I was traveling in America this last week, it kind of bothered me that many masajid don't encourage or don't even allow i'tikaf anymore in the masjids, right? And so, can you tell us the wisdom behind i'tikaf and isolating yourself from your distractions?
I thought you were going to ask me the wisdom of not letting them. It's called litigation.
No.
We live in a litigious society. These poor boards, they're all worried about something happening in the masjid. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
So basically, you see in Surah Maryam, فَاتَّخَذَتْ مِن دُونِهِمْ حِجَابًا, like under the tafsir of these verses, you see that this is a practice of keeping a distance between you and your distractions. Otherwise, your distractions distance you from Allah, right? So you have these last 10 days and 10 nights. I mean, in the month of Ramadan, we're staying away from permissible acts during the day. Yeah. So there are certain things. What are some practical steps that we can take in these last 10, 12 days and nights, that, and what are the benefits of some isolation in our day? One of the people asked a question, like they're working 9 to 5, us like sheikhs and, as leading Taraweeh, we're not working 9 to 5. We're memorizing our Quran, reading our books, and have to lead Taraweeh at night. But they're working 9 to 5. They have to work 9 to 5. So what are some practical steps for them to like limit or abstain from certain distractions of theirs so they can focus, like that's, like instead of that 10-hour marathon, but like maybe that 1 hour sprint, where they can get enough in?
Well, I'm trying to think. I was trying to remember something that Shaykh Ibn al-Habib said, but basically what he said is that he said rak'atani, that if you pray 2 rak'ats with love, it's better than 1,000 without love.
Subhanallah.
And so I think for people, one of the beautiful things about our tradition is that it's not a lot of action that's going to get you to God, but it's action with sincerity. And I think they were much more concerned in the Salaf about things being accepted than they were about just having a lot of things. Because we know that just the prostitute who was forgiven for giving the dog water from her shoe, that's a sound hadith. So we don't know where Allah puts his maghfirah, والعتق من النار. But I think the most important thing, people have jobs, and I think we have to be compassionate with them. I actually like the Turkish tradition where there's mosques where they do short taraweeh, because a lot of people just can't do these long taraweeh. So, and you see a lot of people leave after 8 rakats now, right? I mean, if you go to traditional Muslim countries, mashallah, people, because Ramadan is a social function, and so a lot of people, they're fasting with the whole society, so everything slows down. Whereas here, nothing slows down. People have to, and we have doctors that have to do their work, and they have to be awake. I mean, you don't want a doctor who's was during surgery, he's nodding off because he was in 3-hour taraweeh the night before. So if Sheikh Abdullah bin Bay, I was with him once, and there was we had a medical appointment, and the doctor asked him, can you give me some dhikr? And he gave him something very simple to do after the prayer. And then as we were leaving, I said to him, I think you wanted something more than that. And he said, I said, he's a physician. He has a lot of work. If he does that, it'll benefit him. But it was just a little bit. And I think that's important to remember, is that there's a lot of ways to be devotional. A doctor with the right niyyah, his actual practice becomes a ibadah. And like that. I mean, I always, with my children, when we made dua before food, I would ask to bless the people that grew the food for us, that harvested for us, that brought it to our naqalahu, that brought it to where we were able to get it. That just thinking about all of the people that are keeping this world going, and they're all there for a reason. And so it's really important just to have compassion with people. So I that's my view, is that just a little with love is better than a lot without love.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Bajan?
Yeah, I want to get a little bit personal with Shaykh Hamza, because sometimes when I sit with shuyukh, they get too religious for me, so I could tone it down. They too technical, too spiritual. I know simple people like me, we like spirituality. Did somebody call me the other day? He's like, Shaykh Abdullah, I do good, then I do bad, then I do bad, then I do good. And I said, good job. Say you're a good person.
Exactly.
He's like, yeah. He's like, what do you mean? I said, my friend, you got to keep the shaitan, keep guessing. He's not sure whose team you're on. Are you on his team or the opposite team? Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody does good, and they do good. They make mistakes. وآخرون اعترفوا بذنوبهم خلطوا عملا صالحا وآخر سيئا. And at the ending of the ayah,
that's an important verse.
Yeah, it's a beautiful.
They're all important, but but in this, it's very
in,
apropos.
in the positioning of that verse in Surah Tawbah is after wasabiqun awwaluna min hajma, and I'm like like when I read the sabiqun awwaluna min hajma ansar, I'm like, hopefully we can be from the forerunners.
And the Sahaba had that. The Sahaba, they made mistakes, and Allah gave them tawbah. I mean, Uhud was a great example of that, of where they minkum man yurid dunya. They went after the booty, and Ibn Ata'illah says they wanted the booty for the akhirah. They arad dunya lil akhirah, because they wanted to be able, they wanted to be able to
give it,
to donate and do things.
And Ali says in that ayah, minkum man yurid dunya wa minkum man yurid akhirah, radiyallahu anhu, he says, we didn't know there were people amongst us that actually wanted the dunya until this ayah was revealed. ما كنا نعرف أن أحدنا يحب الدنيا, like يريد الدنيا, like, so that aspect of what أخلت وعملا صالحا وآخر سيئا. In the end, Allah says, عسى الله أن يتوب عليهم. Allah's forgiving. He's so merciful. And so when we sit with scholars like you and Shaykh Abdul Rahman and Shaykh Abdul Wahab, a lot of us, like, people, average people, it inspires us, inspires everybody. Like, we're like, sometimes a lot of times people sit with scholars or people who are like righteous, like you, Shaykh Hamza, like, we can never be that way. And then you said it right now that even the Sahaba, the struggle was there. And I believe that as long as we're trying to get to the final objective, with the falls and the trips and the difficulties that we go through with our nafs, eventually, if we're sincere with the right mentorship, and I really believe, Shaykh Hamza, that you are coded by the mentorship that you had growing up, even with the scholarship that you had and knowledge, but then the tarbiyah and the adab and that you had of the company, and that's something that's extremely missing, Shaykh, in our society.
Well, yeah, and I think it's important to have mentorship. You know where mentor comes from? It's from the Odyssey. The mentor was the elder man who helped Odysseus' son when he was absent during the war. So he was the older man that took care of him, and it's very good to have a spiritual father. Somebody that is in the way that your parents were concerned about your upbringing. They're concerned about your soul. I mean, parents should be concerned about the soul as well, but it's very important to have that. So it's one of the sad things about the time that we're living in, is that there aren't enough, and there's a lot of young people that grow up now without any spiritual tarbiyah, without being around. I mean, it's a great good fortune to be around people. Like, for me, when I was, I traveled a lot and stayed a lot with some of these sheikh. I mean, I lived with a sheikh for 4 years in the same room, Shaykh Hamid Amr al-Wali, who was an amazing, very pious man and just had a huge impact on me. I was the mu'adhin, and he was the imam, and then later I became an imam in a small mosque in the UAE. But for 2 years I was the mu'adhin in the Jami' al-Kabir in it's called Masjid al-Mu'tarad. So, and I inshallah, I really feel like if anything helps me on the Day of Judgment, that one is the one, because it's so amazing to be a mu'adhin, in one of those big mosques, where people are coming to the prayer because your voice called them. I mean, what an incredible blessing that is.
MashaAllah, I've never heard your adhan, Sheikh. I don't know if you want to make us hear it.
No, I do a Maliki adhan. It's pretty straightforward. I don't do like the Malikis don't do the, and then we have what's called tarjih. So we do Allahu Akbar twice only, not 4 times. And then Shadu an la ilaha illallah, Shadu an la ilaha, Shadu Muhammad Rasulullah, and then a second time you repeat it. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu an la ilaha, Ashhadu Muhammad Rasulullah, Ashhadu Muhammad. Hayya ala salah, hayya ala salah, hayya ala al-falah, hayya ala al-falah. And Malik was asked about it because in Mecca they did the one that is the most common around the world now. And he said I'm not interested in what they do in Mecca.
It's all the tradition of Medina.
Yeah, what we did here. Yeah.
Sheikh
I
Hamza,
was trying to find, I wanted to, because there's a beautiful, one of my favorite hadiths of Ramadan. It's somewhere here. By the way, this is a really nice book by Shaykh Hassan Mashat on Wadha'if Ramadan, like what to do during Ramadan. It's a really, really good book because he gives you all the... Anyway, well, I'll just end it with here that the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the dua of Laylat al-Qadr is Allahumma innaka afun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anni. That, I think that sums up what all of us need and should desire, is the afu of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's really what the month is about. The doors of Rahmah open, and the Rahmah is coming into the abode of Ramadan, and then the Maghfirah descends, and finally it's Itqun min an-nar, that freed of, because in some ways most people are deserving of some kind of punishment, but Allah is the most merciful of those who show mercy. And so alhamdulillah, may Allah bless all of your Ramadans. May Allah increase you, elevate you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us openings into his book. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inshallah give us the ability to see the truth and follow it, and to rectify our wrongs. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala open our hearts to the light of this month and the gifts of this month. And inshallah may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for our brothers and sisters in places of tribulation, whether it's from oppression or earthquakes or lack of food or war. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inshallah give us the ability to do whatever we can to facilitate bringing more goodness into this world.
Sheikh, before you leave, Sheikh, this is probably like a personal question. That some of the audience members, they had a lot of questions. Just to tell the audience.
There's questions from audience.
Yeah, we're doing our best to go through them. At the same time, Sheikh has a set amount of time to be with us.
I didn't know that. If there's audience people, then I'll do a little bit more for the questions.
I wanted to keep it for the end, so it keeps your flow the way you want it to be. But one of the questions is, do you have a certain routine in Ramadan? If you wish to share it. If you don't wish to share it, you don't have to share it, Sheikh. Like what would be like a routine that you would like to have in Ramadan?
I mean, my routine doesn't change that much, except for the Taraweeh. And then I focus more, obviously, like my reading is focused on Quran, exegesis or thing. That's the only thing that changes, and then the fasting.
So what is your wife making for you for suhoor and iftar nowadays? What's going on?
Or vice versa.
Alhamdulillah, we have dates and...
Come on, Sheikh. I know your wife is making something special for you, but you're just not telling us.
Afu anhu, Sheikh. This man just keeps talking. Just forgive him. Let him move. But he doesn't have time.
Because Shaykh Hamza is healthy, mashallah, he's eating well. It's not just dates and water. He's having something.
It's nice. Always making nice things. So
if we came over, would we have some of that stuff with you, or it's going to be dates and water?
Inshallah. No. I would.
He took care of it.
Although there is a hadith musalsal, بالضيافة بالماء والتمر.
Please don't apply that on us.
No, we could. Astaghfirullah. That's a great honor to have that. I had the musalsal بالماء والتمر from a few different shuyukh, and it was one of the great blessings of my life.
We'll take the musalsal from you, then we'll get it to another room and have a meal.
Inshallah.
A couple more questions, because you read a lot of books. Do you continue reading books? This is from the audience. Do you continue reading books in Ramadan, or do you focus more on Quran and Hadith?
No. I mean, I'm like I said in the Ramadan, it's more focusing. Like I'm reading a couple of books on Quran and.
Got it.
And then just the recitation. But I mean, my recitation stays pretty constant throughout the year.
MashaAllah. Sheikh, this question right here, does Shaykh Hamza have any advice for dealing with high himma and balancing it so one does not fall into extremism?
Really important question. you really need to be careful, because some people, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Awghidu fi hada din bi rifqin," like go into this deen with gentleness, right? Because he said, "Lan yushadda din ahadun illa ghalaba." If you do too much, you can go really crazy. And so it's important just to have that a kind of to have a kind of just awareness that you can be doing too much. The Prophet ﷺ did not like extremism, even in ibadah. He said, I sleep and I pray, I fast and I break my fast. He didn't like extremism. إِيَّاكُمْ وَالْغُلُوَّ فِي الدِّينِ. Beware of extremism in the religion. And you can go into a psychotic kind of state in doing that. وَاسْلُكْ بِنَفْسِكَ سِبِيلَ الرِّفْقِ لِكَيْ يَكُونَ سَيْرُكَ بِالشَّوْقِ. Go easy on yourself so that you travel with much desire. فَإِنَّ رَكَعْتَيْنِ مِنْ مُحِبِّي أَفْضَلُ مِنْ أَلْفٍ بِغَيْرِ حُبِّي. Because 2 rak'ats with love is better than 1,000 without love. If you look at that amazing hadith of Abu Dharr, he said that the Prophet ﷺ said, لِأَنْ يَغْدُوَ أَحَدُكُمْ فَيَتَعَلَّمَ آيَةً مِنْ كِتَابِ اللَّهِ أَفْضَلُ مِنْ 100 rak'ah. It's better than 100 rak'ats to learn one ayah. And then he said to learn one mas'ala fi ad-din, فَيَتَعَلَّمَ بابا من أبواب العلم يؤمن به أو لا يؤمن به, like practical or theoretical, is better than 1,000 rakats. So knowledge is devotion is good, but knowledge is better. The devotion of knowledge is better. And فقيه واحد أشد على الشيطان من 1000 عابد. One faqih is worse for shaitan than 1,000 devotees. So, our tradition, they said when Abu Dawood went into Iraq, there were 1,000 ink pots in the masjid.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Amazing.
Wow. Sheikh, another question.
All these people just wanting to learn.
Right. Sheikh, I have this, but you have to ask this question. The sister right here is asking about,
that was the next one.
tradition, and she cannot fast, and she's giving fidya, but she's feeling deprived of the blessings of fasting. She says, I know Islam gives permission to the sick to not fast, but how does one feel not deprived?
Wow, that's
Beautiful.
mashallah. That feeling she's going to get a big reward for that. So that feeling is a good feeling. She should not think it's a bad feeling. That's actually, there's people that used to cry, and she had the little crying emoji. There's people that cried because they couldn't give sadaqah, or they couldn't go out on the journey. And so just the fact that she's having those feelings is a sign that, that she's blessed from Allah. Because it's not to have those feelings means your heart's dead. So what a blessing to have that. That's equivalent, or might even be better than fasting. Because she feels so deprived from the ibadah. Because most people, people with hard hearts, they'll be like, I don't have to fast, and they're going to enjoy themselves because they don't have to do the hardship of fasting. Whereas the fact that she's suffering because she can't fast is a sign that her heart's in the right place with Allah.
Another question, Sheikh, was a sister was asking, as mothers, we get caught up in the day with children, and we have the different responsibilities. So some of us are not able to do a lot of the ibadah that sometimes others can do. Also for them, they were asking, how should we cope with that?
Again, the tarbiyah of her children is a great act of ibadah.
Wow.
So, I just think people focus too much on one idea. Like there's people there, Imam Malik said there are many doors to God. And he said the door that was open to him was the door of knowledge, but there's other doors. There's people that don't do a lot of ibadah, but they do an immense amount of charity. And the Prophet said there's no envy in la hasada illa fi ithnatain. And one of them is a man who's given a lot of wealth. ينفق عليه أناء الليل وأناء النهار. وأطراف النهار. So that is a great blessing. So I think if she does dhikr throughout the day and just remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alhamdulillah, I know all of you are dhakirin, but I mean, one of the great blessings of this religion is that, we remember God throughout the day. I mean, what a blessing. Because there's some people, I guarantee you, there are people out there right now that have gone through like years without ever thinking about God.
Wow.
And we're blessed to just have God on our tongue.
La
Like,
ilaha illallah.
subhanallah.
What an honor, Sheikh. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. I mean, there's a lot of other questions, but we try to keep the questions to the topic because there's other off-topic questions as
I
well.
love this question. This Shaykh Hamza, you can relate with this one. She says, I recently became a Muslim, even though I'm not fasting. I got rid of many nafs during Ramadan, but I cry because I feel like I'm not doing enough. So he's the person saying I'm crying because I'm not doing enough. Like, you just accepted Islam, your first Ramadan. What's your words of encouragement for this person?
The Prophet ﷺ said, come into this deen slowly. Don't try to take it all on at once. Just grow in your faith. There's people, I read a book years ago by George Leonard called Mastery. And it really had an impact on me because he talked about what he called dabblers, hackers, and masters.
SubhanAllah.
And so the dabblers, he said, were people like, they would get really excited about something. So like somebody discovers like tennis and they go out and buy a tennis racket and shoes and then they go and they play tennis for a week.
That's like me.
Hey, this is really hard. And then you see the next time and it's like, hey, how's your tennis going? Yeah, no, but I'm on to skiing. Oh, it's amazing. So they do another thing and it's just always dabbling. Right. So he said that those people never go anywhere. They're just dabblers, So it's like, oh, Buddhism this week and then, oh, Islam. And then, oh, I found Jesus, but the second one was the hackers. And those were like people that got into something like tennis and they got to a point where they could play pretty good. And then they stay like that for the rest of their life. And those are just mediocre people that just aren't interested. Whereas he said the master is the person that's committed to incremental growth, just getting better. And the thing about the prayer, like we should just try to get better at the prayer every day. Just get a little better at our presence, get a little better at work. And then it's that harb sijal, it's just it's a war of attrition.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Bajan, I think we should let him go now.
Yeah. We have to.
Sheikh, before you leave, Sheikh, I'm going to share this link, Sheikh. I think it's very important for everyone to see this about Zaytuna and all the work you're doing, Sheikh. If you don't mind, for a few seconds, I know you don't like doing this, just if you can tell us about Zaytuna and the great work that's happening there, especially.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing that. Yeah, I appreciate this.
The least that we can do, Sheikh.
Your institute, I would encourage people to support your institute as well. I think what you all are doing is really important. And, especially for the youth, Allah's given you're in that time when you have more, it's easier to connect with the youth because you're not that far off from where they were. So I really think your organization is an important one. And I know that, you're committed to a sound tradition, of this broad-based tradition of recognizing the valid schools of Islam, being, gentle with the people, not being harsh. And these are all things, especially now in this time, it's not a good time. You just drive people away from Islam. لا تجعلنا فتنة للذين كفروا. I mean, we don't want to be a fitna for disbelievers, but now people have become, لا تجعلنا فتنة للذين آمنوا. Don't make us a fitna for the believers.
Wow.
So the 12,000 strong is based on a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said that the 12,000 on one heart wouldn't be defeated for lack of numbers. There'll be other reasons that they'd be defeated, but not for lack of numbers. And that was I don't know if there's a relationship, but 12,000 was the number of the Roman cohort. And these were great fighting machines. But 12,000 is one of those numbers. So we started this campaign to try to get 12,000 small donors to help with the logistics. And alhamdulillah, we're over 6,000 now, so we're over halfway there.
MashaAllah.
Which is a great blessing. But we're really hoping to get up to 12,000 because it will really enable us to do a lot more than we're doing. We have a lot of plans, a lot of really interesting things, and inshallah, we want to create really high, and alhamdulillah, I mean, you've acknowledged the type level that we aspire to work at. And so we really want to create some really beautiful online courses in different subjects done at a very high level that really will elevate the standard. People may have seen some of the Amir Stein videos that we to educate non-Muslims. Those have had millions of views. It's almost 20 million views so far.
Wow.
So those are having a huge reach, and it's all non-Muslims talking about Islam. They're experts in Islam. Usually we try to find people that have written a book that's positive about Islam from outside the faith, because we want non-Muslims to be able to listen to a non-Muslim talking positively about the religion. Because if we talk positively about it, they say it's just propaganda.
Yeah.
But if somebody who actually has studied it and said, look, this religion is a beautiful religion. I saw an amazing graph the other day, and it was talking about the Western lifestyle. And it showed how the vast majority of humanity was on subsistence lifestyle, just barely surviving throughout human history. And then it shows the hockey curve with Western civilization. But in the timeline, they had the golden age of Islam was it was the only outlier on the whole line.
Wow.
And they were fair enough to acknowledge that the Muslims created these societies that had really high standards of living. I mean, if we went into Baghdad in the 10th century today, let me just show you one amazing.
Shaykh Hamza, I would say pretend that no one's watching. You can just spoil us with your knowledge.
So this is a very interesting book called Human Nature by David Berlinski. But one of the things that he says, which I just really struck me as amazing, was he said that if, here, listen to this. In the 11th and 12th centuries, there must have been men in Europe who doubted the Catholic faith and who had little use for its consolations. If atheism was a real presence in the early and high Middle Ages, it was not one that the philosophers or the chroniclers remarked. The contrast to the Muslim world is striking. Many Muslim intellectuals undertook a journey of faith to doubt, and from doubt to despair. For many years, his physician remarked God had put a lock on al-Ghazali's tongue. The astrologer Abu Mashar ended his days as an atheist. Doubt about the faith was never endorsed in the Muslim world, but it was understood. Europe was more conventional. Its literal thinkers, either in the service of the church or captive to its control. Of all the 12th century philosophers, Peter Abelard came closest to skepticism. He provoked and was reprimanded, having begun his life in holy orders. He ended his life in holy orders. He did not change. When almost 10 years ago I published The Deniable Darwin, I was struck by the fact that the contemporary scientific community resembled, in its swaggering assurance, the intellectual community of the high Middle Ages. A professor at Harvard in the early 21st century, finding himself in the University of Paris in the 13th, would require only a few days to get to his bearings. Nothing more than the polarity of his beliefs would change. As an experienced intellectual, he would feel right at home. Had the professor been returned to 10th century or 11th century Baghdad, he would have been flustered by its intellectual diversity. There is an irony in this worth remarking.
Oof.
Isn't that incredible?
It's incredible.
Drop the mic.
Like, we just forget, like, the Muslims were they were intellectual powerhouses. They weren't afraid of dissent. They would combat. They would have open debates with atheists. They didn't have any of these problems. Whereas we're living in a culture now that is so obsessed with, quote unquote, this political correct view of the world that if you don't adhere to it, you will be canceled. You will be canceled. You are not allowed to question. We're living. It's like in the Middle Ages. like freedom of speech is like dissipating before our eyes. It's just amazing. People, I mean, this poor swimmer, I don't know if you followed that story, but the swimmer who,
Transgender?
yeah, she's like a national champion, but she lost to this man who said he was a woman.
Yeah.
And all she just said is, look, this isn't fair. He's got advantages: bone structure, musculature, testosterone levels. I mean, there's a reason why the golf course, you have the women's tees and the men's tees, because women can't, you can't do those drives that a man can do. They don't have the muscles to do that. You know,
Biologically different. Anatomy is different.
They've got men wrestling women in these high school wrestling things. And it's just, and so she came to San Francisco to give a talk, and these violent people, they beat her, literally beat her physically. There's no discussion. We can't even talk. It's just, we will shut you down. And this is something we should all be really concerned about, because things can go really south quickly. Cultures can really go south quickly. And so we have to support those people that are speaking the truth, whatever their religion is. You know, we need allies, because there's a battle raging outside, and it's really troubling where the weather vane is pointing to.
That's why
Sheikh,
that's you know, Shaykh Hamza is very humble, and he didn't speak about the 12,000 strong. There's about 3,000 people watching live right now.
If they all signed up, I will be very happy.
Yeah, so all of us should sign up, and starting with us.
You can do, you know, $10, $20, $30 a month. People, $1 a day is not a lot. And I know there's a lot of good causes out there, but this is really exciting what's happening. We just had a symposium at Harvard, and our students really, they just made us proud. They did so well with the Harvard students. Even the Harvard professors were really impressed with what was happening. So we're getting students into Harvard, into Oxford, into University of Chicago. So we're really beginning to be recognized by these universities that are considered the top universities in the West. But I want, you know, my goal is that Muslims, that we have our own universities, that we don't send our kids to Harvard. We send them to our universities that have those standards, that they want to come to our universities. This is an aspiration now, you know, but it is an aspiration. You know, I get invited to conferences. Like, I just went to an AI conference on ethics of AI at the Vatican. Why we should be inviting them to our conferences? Why are we always the guests? We should be the hosts. We should be people that are at the forefront of these debates. We have things to say from our tradition that are powerful, they're meaningful, and they resonate with people of goodwill and people of intelligence and people of conscience. So it's really important for us to just recognize that we have a religion that has answers. No matter how far the Muslims have fallen, the faith has been preserved. So we have fallen far. We are unfortunately, we're at the base of the mountain, but we were once at the top of the mountain and had that amazing vista where we could see very, very far. And that's where we need to restore our faith. It should be back at the top of the mountain, because that's where it belongs. It belongs at the acme of human civilization.
Shaykhuna, I can almost promise, Shaykh, whatever number you get today, if you come on site to Miftaah, you owe us a trip, Shaykh. I'm gonna put you on the spot.
You get all 6,000 in one day.
All 6,000 in one day, Shaykh. All you gotta do, and may Allah bless Dr. Aisha for setting this up for us. We would love for you to come visit us, Shaykh. Inshallah, will be an honor for us. Inshallah, we'll come for your graduation on May 20th, the May 21st weekend.
Bring the Mizan al-Amal.
I'll bring the Mizan al-Amal.
I'm going to read it properly.
We're going to have the one that has tashkil on it.
Inshallah, Shaykh Hamza, he's so busy. He's committed to the causes. Even when he doesn't make it, we know his heart is with us. His du'as are with us. But truly, Shaykh Hamza is so humble, and both of you guys are very kind in speaking about this. But institutions, when we talk about, Shaykh Hamza spoke about the Vatican and these institutions. Before, Jami al-Azhar was the largest endowment institution in the world, one of the largest endowment institutions in the world. And then Jamal Abdel Nasser and these people came in and they took the endowment of Jamia Azhar, and it became a public.
A lot of endowments have been stolen.
Have been stolen. And Islamic institutions' growth was through the endowment. The Azhar endowments in Egypt, Mauritania, Pakistan, everywhere on the planet.
Yeah.
Now the Vatican is the largest endowment in the world, but larger than the Vatican's endowment was Jamia Azhar's endowment in those days. And now we're looking at Harvard at $50 billion.
50 billion. Yeah.
50 billion.
Wow.
And Sheikh Hamza, when you're talking about vision of 12,000 strong, and what you started this 20 some years ago, what your vision was, this is larger than you, larger than Zaytuna. This is for the cause. And for Zaytuna to be the voice for Islam and the intellectual debates that happen in the world today in Islam, the narrative can be channeled through the discussions through Zaytuna Institute and the scholars of Zaytuna. This can't happen with the funding that we're operating with. And with the I'm not saying minimum, with the alhamdulillah, the great amount of funding that Zaytuna has or Miftaah has, institutions, and the large amount of work that you've got, how you made $1 into 100, and you made 100 into 1,000, 1,000 into 100,000, and the work that's been done through the literature, through the 20 million that you said on that video, we owe it to not only Shaykh Hamza Yusuf, but everyone at Zaytuna, the work they have done. We're indebted, because this is the dream where people, non-Muslims, come to our colleges in the United States. Imagine people applying to come to Zaytuna from out of the country to study liberal arts, study medicine, study engineering, studying sciences. And this is the vision, and this can't happen with just the amount of funding that the institutions are getting. And we are sending our children, our families, to Harvard, Princeton, Ann Arbor. If you look at the one guy from overseas, Prince Walid, gave the whole cancer institution. The reality is that we have to do this for our own institutions.
Well, the American Muslim community is very wealthy and quite capable if there's vision. The Bible says that people without a vision perish. You need vision.
Yeah.
The Arabs say the reason that the donkey is lower than the camel is the donkey looks at its feet, but the camel looks at the horizon.
Wow.
So Allah struck a similitude, a negative one about the in Ankara aswat da sawt al-hamir, but a positive one. وَإِلَى الْإِبْلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ. So the we should be looking at the horizon, and too often we can't see beyond our noses. So it's very important for Muslims to just restore the Prophet ﷺ. I mean, one of my favorite hadiths is the Suraqa ibn Malik.
Wow.
When he's trying to for 100 camels, that's like what they offered him, and the Prophet ﷺ tells him about the bracelets of Kisra. The Prophet saw where his deen was going. Like he knew and in the Khandaq, when he struck and he saw the palaces of Sham and then the palaces of Persia, and the Munafiqun were saying, we can't even go and relieve ourselves out of fear. And he's talking about, because that they had no vision, they couldn't see beyond their nose. And so Muslims are people of vision. They're people of bu'd an-nazar, what the Arabs call, far-sightedness. One of the really interesting things, I just found this out, I did not know this, but myopia is becoming a global crisis. Did you know that?
No.
Just Google it. I had no idea. Myopia is short-sightedness. So because people are spending so much time indoors and on screens, their eyes aren't developing properly, so they're actually becoming short-sighted. And they said the thing that the children, it happens when you're young, that the most important thing was blue. And so the sky, how children always look up at the sky, like they'll lie down and just look at the sky. That's actually developing their eyes, looking at the heavens. And the thing about the Mauritanians, they have the most incredible farsightedness. I mean, they can see. I remember once we were walking in the desert, and they have these things called kidya. It's like a mesa, these really high. And we climbed up to the very top. And right when we got to the top, this Bedouin that I was with, Muhammad Fadl, he said, "Oh, look at that man over there. He's lost his camels probably, because his camels are over there." And I'm like, "What? Like where?" And he's like, "Over there. See that man? He's he's looking for his camels, I think. And they said his camels are over there. And I'm like, it took me so long. Finally, I saw this little ant. It looked like an ant. You know, it was a man walking. It was so far away, but he could see it. Like just coming over, he saw it almost instantly. And it reminded me of Zarqa Yamama, you know, the woman who could see for 3 days, the Arab woman. Anyway, barakallah fikum. Allah bless all of you. It's a pleasure to be with you. May Allah increase you, elevate you. Inshallah, may Allah تقبل منا صيامنا وقيامنا واحشرنا في زمرة خير الأنام. اللهم أحيينا مؤمنين وأمتنا مسلمين محسنين طائعين لك يا رب العالمين لا مبدلين ولا مغيرين. آمين.
جزاك الله خير.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.